You're welcome to the Tech Talk Show with me, Kazeem, this good afternoon. Today is really a very good one, and I'm really excited to be hosting Mike Pfeiffer with me on Tech Talk show today. Hi, Mike, and welcome.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks, Kazeem. Appreciate it, and excited to be here, man. This is fun.
So let's begin with you telling us a little bit about yourself now, what you do, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been in IT for over 20 years, and basically 5-6 years ago, I was working over at AWS as a solutions architect. Prior to that, I was an engineer at Microsoft, a field engineer, and when I was over at AWS, I just saw the opportunity in the marketplace. I just realized that so many people were struggling to learn cloud, and I decided to get back into teaching. So since 2016, I've been running cloudskills.io, and it's, the market's changed a lot over the years. So cloudskills.io has changed a lot over the years. But basically what I do is, training and education, across all kinds of different things. Lately, we've been doing more project focused content, more, not necessarily certification focused. We were doing that for a while. And so it's been really interesting because we're trying to find ways to help people ramp up. And, depending on your background, there's all kinds of different things that you got to learn. So it's been a fun challenge trying to figure that stuff out. And we're looking forward to 2022. We got some big stuff coming. So it's going to be exciting.
Thank you very much. The topic today is Azure for AWS professionals, right? So we're going to jump straight in. So I want to ask you, how easy is it for someone with AWS skills to pick up Azure skills? And how do you want to compare Azure to AWS and perhaps some other clouds now in terms of how easy it is to learn and use?
Sure. Well, I think a lot of people will say that AWS is more complex and harder to learn than Azure. And I would say that that's probably fair. AWS has, of course, got a head start on everybody that's been doing cloud platforms. And, probably one of the, luxuries that Microsoft has is they're able to see what AWS did prior, right? And then they're able to come back and have their own complementary, service, their own feature parity to what AWS has, but then they're also able to innovate on it and find opportunities to improve it, right? So, AWS, everybody I think knows, they were first to market with a public cloud, and they were working with biggest companies in the world, working on all kinds of interesting business problems. And it's pretty advanced when you get into it and you're really building on it. So I think that if you understand AWS, it's going to be pretty natural coming over to Azure and just mapping the stuff that you already know over to Azure, because there's so many parallels. And I think that it's, even if you're an Azure person, it's going to be easier to learn AWS just because you already start to understand the patterns, right? So there are very similar services across both platforms. And, it's been really fun to watch now that, Microsoft has really closed the gap over the last couple of years. It's fun to watch the two platforms kind of compete with each other. But I think that, if you're already up to speed on AWS, then you just need to take what you know now, map it over to Azure. And in my opinion, a lot of the interfaces, the tooling, especially developer tooling from the Azure side, is better. And so I think, if you can get past the terminology, then I think it'd be a much easier transition coming over from AWS to Azure.
Now, just like the topic suggests, right? So if we try to look at things from the perspective of people already with AWS skills looking to embrace Azure, so what are those very pronounced similarities in terms of the service offerings now that AWS and Azure share? And maybe some of the obvious differences also between the two providers with regards to the services too.
Right. Yeah. I mean, to me, the core services, everything's built on the core services, right? So you got virtual machines, you've got object storage and some other kind of, virtual storage. You've got security and the identity story there. You've got virtual networking. So I think that those, core services, those are the major things where, like, once you understand the core services, you understand how all the managed services are built on top of that, right? So for example, over at AWS, you've got the EC2 service that does the virtual machines. You got the EBS service, which is the Elastic Block Store for like virtual disks. You got S3 for object storage. You got the IAM service for identity. And you can take all those core services and build a managed service like, Amazon RDS, which is the relational database service. That's just like using all those core services to create a managed service for database work. So, I think that just like on Azure, if you learn those core services, then you start to understand when you go into a new managed service, kind of how it's built and, what you're dealing with. And I think that was one of the places for me where when I first got started with AWS, I got really good with those core services. And now it's easy to like go in and look at a brand new managed service and kind of understand it because I understand the core services of the platform. To me, probably one of the biggest places where there's a huge difference, even though in the core service like identity, right? So the identity access management service in AWS does the same stuff that Microsoft does with Azure AD and all their identity stuff, but it works completely different. So I think for enterprises that are already on Active Directory, have been using Microsoft for a long time, they're going to really enjoy moving into Azure and dealing with Azure AD because it's so tightly coupled, right? And there's so much consistency there. You can do a lot of the same things over in AWS, but it's going to be more work, right? So there's a huge difference there for the most part in some of the ways that you might integrate with Active Directory. So that's a big one. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of similar services, but under the hood, how they work is much, much different. So if anybody's ever signed into the AWS console, you're probably like staggered by all the icons and stuff. There's just endless services. So, we could go on all day, but I think those are the major considerations starting out.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. I have these questions, right, that I get asked a lot about which platform to start with, right? Though I know some people would like to see this as which is better. But I think that's not the case because even I know the Microsoft guys like to even employ people with, for instance, AWS skills, right? But let me throw this to you now. Azure, AWS, GCP, which is the best to start with? For an absolute beginner, and why would you recommend to?
Yeah, that question comes up a lot, and the reality is the answer is different depending on your own personal point of view and your own background and your own circumstances and experience. And what I mean by that is, imagine that you've been in tech support for 2-3 years and you work at a place where maybe you're not in AWS every day, but your company uses AWS and you're already exposed to some of the terminology and people are talking about it. And maybe you're doing some trouble tickets and kind of got a basic idea of how it works. That's for you in that position. AWS is probably going to be a lot more of a logical place to start because you've already got some perspective and awareness versus, going over to Azure. And the same thing could be said for somebody that works in a Microsoft shop. So I think that number one, like, who are you? Where are you coming from? Like, if you don't have any experience whatsoever, I think that Microsoft and Amazon have done an awesome job of creating documentation and creating community resources. Microsoft, it's not hard to tell if you look at the community that's out there. Their community seems to be way more active, right? So I would say if you have no experience, like maybe you're not even in tech yet, maybe you're thinking about getting into cloud, coming over from school, or maybe you're in a different part of IT right now, like you're a project manager, and you're thinking about going more technical. To me, I think Azure has a leg up because the community is like so vibrant and you can find all kinds of places. And I'm not saying that AWS doesn't have a community, but Microsoft, with the MVP program and all the other stuff that is out there to be offered, it's just a much more rich community environment. So I think that, when you're trying to learn this stuff, you can go very far on your own, but at some point you need to break out of that and start talking to other people. And that's going to help you go to the next level with your learning. And there's no need to wait for that. And that's why I think that when people are learning, community is a big deal, right? Getting around people that are doing the same thing that you're trying to do or that have done what you're trying to do and that are they're fully aware of the work that it takes to do that, and they're supporting you along the way, right? They're cheering you on, and that's a big deal. And it could be, one of those things where you're trying to learn this stuff, and it could be kind of, like demotivating sometimes, because some of this stuff's difficult, and you might do a lab, and do some hands-on and get, depressed because it's like so hard. It didn't work, and then you want to give up. And that's why having people around you that, are cheering you on is a big deal. So, long way to answer. I say, kind of depends on where you're coming from. But if you're completely brand new and you've got no resources and no perspective, I think that Microsoft's kind of got an advantage with the amount of free content that's out there and the vibrant community.
Thank you very much for that. Now, let's talk skills for a little bit, building on what we just discussed now. So what would you say are the top 3 skills that people need to have now to succeed in cloud computing? This really doesn't have to be necessarily cloud skills now. Maybe you also want to include some complementary skills required, more like a prereq now to also coming into cloud. So
yeah, I think it's a combination. There's obviously the technical side, then there's the maybe more of the soft skills side, culture side. So on the technical side, I would say that you need to have some some sysadmin experience or some development experience of some kind. So like, a year or two in IT would be good. Either your help desk or you started off as a developer or something like that, or you're in school and you've gone through computer science, right? At some level, maybe, it's not, you don't have a degree, but at least you understand the basics, like computer science 101. So, a baseline of technical knowledge is needed. But we're all going to be in continuous learning mode forever from here on out. So I would say that companies are going to have to, and are going to be challenged to be open to bringing people in with a base level of knowledge and then helping build those skills for their employees, because there's just such a lack of talent that they're going to have to do that. So, I don't think that to be successful to start, you have to master a ton of technical skills. Just a baseline understanding of some computer science or just general IT experience, 1 or 2 years. So that's kind of like the core skill set to start with, I would say. Beyond that, I think probably one of the biggest things where I think that messes people up that I see that are struggling is fixed mindset of thinking that, they can't do it, or like there's some kind of permanent issue. They can't move past it. They can't go beyond their limits, that kind of stuff. So having an open mind and really challenging your limiting thoughts is huge, right? Like, and I see this a lot. Like people just won't start because they kind of close the door with a fixed mindset approach of, I'm not a developer, so there's no way I could write a bash script. Why would I even start that, right? Or I could never be a DevOps engineer because I've never written any code. So why start, right? And all those kind of things are a fixed mindset, and it's just basically saying no to possibility. And what we all have to do in this industry, especially, is keep an open mind and be like, hey, there's got to be a way to do this. If I don't, have the resources right now, who can I connect to and enroll to support me? So those are probably the biggest ones to me on the first two. I think the second one's probably the most important, having an open mind, being open to trying new things and being open to experimentation and failing. That kind of goes into the growth mindset of just being open to failure. And then beyond that, the last one I would say is, we all have to challenge ourselves to be more social in this industry, because it's very easy to come into an office like this and, just lock the doors and put the hoodie on and write code and never talk to anybody. But everybody's probably heard the horror stories of the contention across teams and us versus them type of culture. And it's no fun to work at a place like that. And if we could start to learn how to communicate with each other better, I think that over time can improve drastically. So taking on the responsibility of being more social and being open to improving your communication skills, I think, is going to be a big one as well.
Thank you. And it's good that you've also mentioned that there are a number of community-related activities also going on now that people can also take advantage of.
Yep.
I don't want us to finish without talking about certifications, right?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. So since the topic today is Azure for AWS Pro, what would be that Azure certification of choice that you would want to recommend for someone with AWS background looking to embrace Azure and would like to validate their Azure skills?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So probably the fastest and easiest way would just be to do the AZ900 Azure Fundamentals certification, which if you're an AWS person, that's just like the AWS Essentials. It's very basic. One of the things that a lot of people were pushed into in AWS was going to the AWS Solutions Architect certification. That's an associate level. But from a content perspective, it's very similar to like Azure Solution Architect cert. But that's a hard place to start. I think if you're already working in AWS, if you just come over to Azure and you study, like if you go to Microsoft Learn and go through their Azure Fundamentals content and you're already an AWS person, you could probably just go take the AZ900 test and pass it. If you're really doing a lot of AWS right now, because it's just a matter of mapping the names over Microsoft's Azure platform to the stuff you already know over in AWS. So that's probably the easiest and fastest way to just get some points on the board and get Azure certified. But like I said, the AWS Solution Architect Associate Cert was the first one they ever had, and it's got the most brand recognition. And I would assume they probably have the most number of certified people on that exam, right, on that certification. So if you're in that boat, the interesting thing with Microsoft is that they've got the AZ-104 Microsoft Azure Administrator Cert, which AWS doesn't technically have an administrator cert. They have a SysOps cert, but it's very different at that level. There's probably a lot of similarities to some of the stuff you would see on the architect path over in AWS in the administrator stuff at Microsoft. So long story short, I would say, for the most tactical hands-on experience of really knowing Azure, the Azure Administrator AZ-104 cert, from what I've seen, is going to give you the most context. Microsoft's architect exam that they've just now started collapsing into one exam, it's definitely going to be more high level and more design oriented, right? So if I was coming over from AWS, I would either think about AZ900, AZ104, and then I would move into an advanced cert, which would be either architect or DevOps or something like that.
Thank you very much, Mike. It's really nice to really have you on today. So here's what we have for you today on the Tech Talk with me, Kazeem. But just before we say goodbye now, Mike, any last words from you?
Yeah, last words. Well, we're coming into 2022. So I would say, what is it that you want to get done in 2022 and start thinking about it now and start planning for 2022 here in December. Obviously, we want to take a break and celebrate the holidays and all that kind of stuff. But maybe going into 2022, think about how you could start being more strategic next year. And I'll give you kind of 3 tips, right? So number 1, figure out how you can start mapping out your days to where you could get more study time in or more personal time in just for your own career building, right? So number 1, in 2022, map out some time for yourself for personal development, either it's soft skills or hard skills. Number 2, get involved with a community, start building some social support, some network. And then number 3, start sharing what you're learning. We're all learning. So one of the best ways to build your personal brand is just share what you're learning. Tell us what's up and what you've learned. So those are my tips for 2022.
Thank you so much. So you've heard it from Mike. And so please, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, do so. It's the Tech Talk with Kazeem up on YouTube. So please be kind to also tell others about it. So on that note, it's a bye-bye from myself and Mike. And let's do this again another time.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.